Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you today is going to completely change the way you look at every single penny you have ever held in your hand, every coin jar sitting on your shelf, every forgotten wallet tucked in a drawer, and every piggy bank your kids have been filling up for years, because right now, we are talking about one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-blowing, absolutely legendary coins in the entire history of American numismatics, and that coin, my friend, is the 1945 Wheat Penny, a coin so extraordinary, so unbelievably rare in its most perfect and error-driven forms, that collectors across the entire world have been chasing it for decades, whispering about it at conventions, dreaming about it in their sleep, and paying prices so astronomical that it would make your head spin, because we are talking about a coin that has been valued at up to $13 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely correctly, $13 million for what looks, on the surface, like a completely ordinary 1-cent coin that most people would drop in a tip jar without a second thought. Now I want you to just let that number sink in for a moment. $13 million. For a penny, a single copper coin the size of your thumbnail, a coin that was minted during one of the most turbulent and historically significant years in all of human history. A year when the entire world was holding its breath, when soldiers were coming home, when the greatest war ever fought was finally drawing to a close, when the United States Mint was working around the clock under immense pressure, producing hundreds of millions of coins to keep up with the demands of a wartime economy that was shifting, changing, and straining at every single seam. And it was precisely because of that pressure, that chaos, that beautifully imperfect moment in history, that certain coins slipped through the cracks of quality control and became something far more valuable than anyone at the time could have ever imagined. Now, before we dive deeper into everything you need to know about this incredible coin, I want you to stay with me all the way to the very end of this video, because we have not one but two coins on today's list, and I promise you the second coin we are going to talk about is going to leave your jaw on the floor. It involves a different year, a different mint mark, a completely different story, and a value so staggering that even seasoned coin collectors double-take when they hear it. So do not touch that back button. Do not close this tab, because the story only gets wilder from here, and you are absolutely not going to want to miss a single second of what is coming. But right now, let us focus entirely on this breathtaking 1945 Wheat Penny and unpack every single layer of what makes it so impossibly, so outrageously, so historically valuable. So let us go all the way back to 1945, and I mean really back to a world that looks almost nothing like the one we live in today, a world where World War II was raging on two fronts simultaneously, where the Pacific Theater was still boiling over with some of the most intense combat in military history, where Europe was finally beginning to see the light at the end of a very long and very dark tunnel, and where the United States government was managing one of the most complex wartime economies ever assembled, rationing materials, redirecting resources, and doing everything in its power to keep soldiers supplied and the home front functioning. And right in the middle of all of this, the United States Mint was grinding, producing coins at a pace that was almost superhuman, because the economy needed money, real physical money, coins that people could use every single day. And the San Francisco Mint, which is where that little S mint mark comes from, was no exception. It was producing pennies by the hundreds of millions, literally hundreds of millions of coins rolling off the presses day after day. And that is exactly where things start to get incredibly interesting, because when you are producing that many coins under that much pressure, mistakes happen, and not just small mistakes, but the kind of rare, extraordinary, collector-defining mistakes that turn a 1-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure. Now, the standard 1945 Wheat Penny is itself a coin of great historical significance, struck in the familiar bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, a composition that had only recently been restored after the famous 1943 steel pennies were produced during the height of the war, when copper was desperately needed for ammunition and military equipment. And so by 1945, the mint had returned to that warm, rich, classic copper look that coin collectors absolutely adore. But it is not the standard versions of the 1945s that we are really here to talk about today. It is the error coins, the rare varieties, the specimens that exist in conditions and configurations so unusual and so perfect that they have driven the collector community absolutely wild for generations. And at the very top of that list, sitting like a crown jewel in the world of American numismatics, are the double die errors, the off-metal strikes, the full red gem specimens, and the extraordinarily rare transitional errors that have occasionally surfaced and sent auction rooms into a complete frenzy. Let us talk about the double die error first, because this is one of the most visually stunning and most commonly sought-after error types in all of coin collecting, and when it appears on a 1945s Wheat Penny, it is nothing short of spectacular. A double die error occurs when the coin die, the device used to stamp the design into the metal planchet, receives more than one impression during the hubbing process, and those impressions are ever so slightly misaligned, creating a doubling effect. That is visible to the naked eye or under light magnification, and on the 1945s Wheat Penny, this doubling can appear on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, on the motto "In God We Trust," on the Liberty inscription, and on the famous wheat stalks on the reverse side of the coin. And when you hold one of these coins up to the light and you see that crisp, clean, unmistakable doubling, there is a moment of pure electricity that every coin collector knows, that breathless instant when you realize you might be holding something extraordinary, something that does not belong in a tip jar or a parking meter but rather behind glass in a climate-controlled display case worth more money than most cars, most furniture, and maybe even some houses. But the double die is just the beginning, because there is another category of error that takes the 1945s Wheat Penny into an entirely different stratosphere of rarity and value, and that is the OFF metal strike. And this is where things get genuinely surreal, because an off-metal strike occurs when a planchet, that is the blank metal disc that gets struck by the die to become a coin, made of the wrong material, somehow makes its way into the coin press and gets struck with the penny design. And in 1945, the most legendary and most impossibly rare version of this error involves the 1944 steel planchets that were left over from the previous year's production. Because remember, 1943 pennies were made of steel, and some of those steel planchets lingered in the mint's production machinery into 1944 and even into 1945, and when one of those steel planchets accidentally got struck with the 1945's penny dies, what emerged was a coin that is so rare, so historically loaded, so completely unique that it exists at the absolute pinnacle of American coin collecting, and specimens of this type, when authenticated and graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC, have commanded prices at auction that are almost incomprehensible, prices that put them firmly in the category of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. And this is precisely where that astonishing $13 million valuation comes from, because a perfect, authenticated, high-grade example of the rarest 1945s Wheat Penny error types is not just a coin, it is a piece of history, a physical artifact of one of the most pivotal years in human civilization, wrapped in copper and frozen in time, and collectors will quite literally pay any price to own it. Now let us talk about condition, because in the world of rare coins, condition is everything, absolutely everything, and the difference between a coin graded MS-60 and one graded MS-65 or above can mean tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars in value, and the grading scale used by professional numismatists runs from poor at one end all the way to mint state 70 at the other, and a coin that achieves that perfect MS-70 grade is theoretically flawless, showing absolutely no signs of wear, no contact marks, no bag marks, no hairlines, nothing but the original mint luster radiating across the surface in all its glory. And for a 1945's Wheat Penny to achieve that kind of grade is extraordinarily rare, precisely because these coins were produced in such massive quantities and circulated so heavily during and after the war years, which means that the vast majority of surviving specimens show significant wear and handling, making the high-grade examples that do survive that much more precious and that much more valuable, And when you combine an exceptional grade with a confirmed error variety on a 1945's Wheat Penny, you have created something that the numismatic world does not have adequate words to describe, something that transcends the category of coin and becomes an artifact, a legend, a story told in metal. And here is the thing that I really want you to think about as you are watching this video. The thing that makes coin collecting so uniquely thrilling compared to almost any other hobby or investment in the world. And that is the fact that these coins did not stay safely locked in vaults or government warehouses. They circulated, they went out into the real world, they passed through the hands of soldiers and factory workers and school children and shopkeepers. They rode in pockets and purses, and cash registers and coin jars, and many of them are still out there, still sitting in old collections, still tucked inside coin rolls at estate sales, still hiding in the back of a dresser drawer in some quiet house that nobody has cleaned out in 40 years. And that means that right now, today, there is a very real possibility that somewhere in this country, maybe even in your city, maybe even in your home, there is a 1945 Wheat Penny sitting completely unrecognized, completely undervalued, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the curiosity to pick it up, look at it closely, and realize what they are truly holding. And that is the dream that keeps every coin collector going. That is the fantasy that drives people to search through thousands of coins at a time, roll after roll, jar after jar, estate sale after estate sale, because the treasure is real, the treasure is out there, and it could be anywhere. Now I want to remind you again, because this is absolutely critical, do not leave this video yet, because the next coin we are about to cover is something that is going to absolutely stun you. It is from a different year, carries a different mint mark, and the story behind it is so dramatic, so filled with historical irony and numismatic mystery, that you are going to be talking about it for days. And we are getting to it very soon, but first, let us finish everything you need to know about the 1945's Wheat Penny, because there is still so much ground to cover. The auction history of the finest known 1945's Wheat Penny error specimens reads like the record book of a fine art auction house rather than a coin show, with prices climbing steadily over the decades as awareness of these coins has grown, and as the pool of serious collectors with serious money has expanded dramatically, and some of the most storied auction appearances of these coins have come through houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections, where professional numismatists and passionate private collectors go head-to-head in bidding wars that can last hours and push prices into the stratosphere. And every time one of these legendary specimens appears on the block, it creates a buzz in the collecting community that reverberates for months, because everyone wants to know who has it, what condition it is in, what the final hammer price will be, and whether it will set a new record. And the answer, more often than not, is yes, because the market for top-tier error coins from the World War II era has been on an almost unbroken upward trajectory for decades, driven by a combination of historical significance, extreme rarity, and the simple, undeniable truth that more people every year are discovering the incredible world of numismatics and wanting a piece of it for themselves. Let me also paint you a picture of what it actually feels like to find one of these coins, because I think it is important to make this real and tangible for you. Imagine you are at an estate sale on a quiet Saturday morning, and you find a box of old coins in the back of a closet, nothing fancy, just a rusted tin full of loose change from decades ago. And you start going through it piece by piece, not expecting much, and then your fingers close around a small copper coin, and you flip it over, and you see the date 1945, and you see the mint mark, and something in your gut tells you to look more closely, so you pull out your magnifying glass and you bring it up to the coin, and suddenly you see it, the doubling on the date, the slight misalignment on the portrait, and in that moment your heart is hammering in your chest because you know, that you might be holding something worth more money than you have ever seen in your life, and that feeling, that electric, breathless, world-stopping feeling is exactly what coin collecting is all about, and it is why people dedicate their lives to this pursuit, because the hunt is real, the reward is real, and the 1945's Wheat Penny is one of the greatest prizes the hunt has ever produced. And if you think that story is incredible, just wait, because the next coin on our list today is going to take everything you just heard and multiply it in ways you are not prepared for. It is a coin with its own stunning history, its own jaw-dropping errors, its own record-breaking auction story, and a value that is going to make you look at the entire era of wheat pennies in a completely different light. So stay right where you are. Keep watching, because we are about to go somewhere even more extraordinary, and you absolutely do not want to miss a single word of what is coming next. Last 1948 D wheat penny worth $8 million, and yes, you heard that number correctly, $8 million, for a coin that was minted in Denver in the year 1948, just 3 years after the end of World War II, during a period of immense national change and economic transformation in the United States of America, a time when soldiers were returning home by the millions, when suburbs were being built almost overnight, when the American dream was being reinvented from the ground up, and when the United States Mint in Denver was once again cranking out coins at a breathtaking pace to meet the demands of a booming peacetime economy. And somewhere in the middle of all that production, all that noise and heat and metal and machinery, something extraordinary happened, something that the quality control teams at the Denver Mint almost certainly never caught, something that slipped out into the world disguised as an ordinary 1-cent coin and has since become one of the most coveted and most dramatically valued pieces in the entire canon of American numismatics. And that something is the 1948 D wheat penny in its rarest, most perfect, most error-defined form, a coin that stands as a monument to the beautiful imperfection of human production and the almost miraculous way that history preserves its own secrets for the people curious enough to find them. Now, to truly understand why the 1948 D wheat penny is so extraordinary, you have to understand what was happening in America in 1948, because this was not just any ordinary post-war year. This was the year that the Cold War was beginning to take shape, the year that the Berlin blockade sent shockwaves through the Western world, the year that Harry Truman was fighting one of the most unlikely comeback campaigns in presidential history, the year that America was simultaneously celebrating its military victory and bracing itself for a new and very different kind of global tension. And in the midst of all of this, ordinary American life was moving forward with an energy and an optimism that is almost impossible to fully appreciate from the vantage point of the present day. People were buying houses, starting families, opening businesses, and spending money, real physical money, coins and bills that passed from hand to hand and pocket to pocket in the great flowing river of daily commerce, and the Denver Mint was doing its part to keep that river full, striking pennies by the tens of millions. And it is precisely because of that volume, that relentless, never-stopping production, that the most extraordinary errors managed to survive. The 1948 D wheat penny that commands values in the millions of dollars range is not your garden variety circulated coin. It is a specimen defined by a combination of factors that almost never align, and when they do, the result is something that the numismatic community treats with an almost reverent awe, and the first of those factors is the repunched mint mark error, which occurs when the D mint mark, that small letter D stamped onto the coin to indicate it was produced at the Denver Mint, is applied more than once, and the second application is slightly offset from the first, creating a visible doubling or shadow effect on the mint mark that is immediately recognizable to trained eyes and absolutely thrilling to collectors who know what they are looking at, because a repunched mint mark on a wheat penny from this era is a documented, authenticated, historically verified error variety that adds significant premium to the coin's value, and on the 1948 D this error appears in several known configurations, each one slightly different, each one with its own story and its own place in the collector record books. But the repunched mint mark, as exciting as it is not even the most extraordinary error type associated with the 1948 D wheat penny, because the true crown jewel of this coin's error universe is something far more dramatic, far more rare, and far more valuable, and that is the double die obverse error on the finest known specimens, an error where the doubling is so pronounced, so beautifully clear, so unmistakably visible on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, on the motto "In God We Trust," and on the word liberty that even someone with absolutely no background in coin collecting can see it immediately when the coin is placed under even modest magnification. And it is this combination, the double die obverse paired with the high grade and the Denver Mint mark, that has pushed the value of the finest known examples into territory that most people struggle to even conceptualize, because $8 million is not just a number, it is a statement about rarity, about history, about the almost supernatural way that certain objects transcend their original purpose and become something that human beings will sacrifice enormous amounts of time and money to possess. Let us also talk about the color designation, because this is something that plays a massive role in the value of copper coins from the Wheat Penny era, and there are 3 primary color designations used by professional grading services when evaluating these coins, and they are red, red-brown, and brown, and the difference between them is enormous in terms of collector value, because a coin designated red has retained essentially all of its original mint red luster, that warm, glowing, almost fiery copper color that the coin had the moment it left the press. And this color is extraordinarily difficult to preserve over the course of 70+ years, because copper is a reactive metal that begins to tone and oxidize almost immediately upon exposure to air, moisture, and human handling, which means that a 1948 Wheat Penny that has survived in gem red condition, with full original mint luster blazing across both surfaces, is a coin that has beaten enormous odds simply to exist in that state. And when you add that red designation to a high mint state grade and a confirmed error variety, you have assembled a combination so rare and so desirable that the $8 million valuation begins to feel not just plausible but almost inevitable, because the market for coins like this is driven by collectors who understand exactly how rare this combination is and who are willing to pay accordingly. Now, the auction history of the finest 1948 Wheat Penny specimens is itself a fascinating story, one that tracks the evolution of the rare coin market over the past several decades and illustrates just how dramatically values have increased as the hobby has grown, and as the finest known examples have changed hands among the world's most serious collectors, and some of the most dramatic auction appearances of top-tier 1948 Wheat Pennies have generated headlines not just within the numismatic community but in mainstream media as well, because there is something universally captivating about the idea of a penny selling for millions of dollars, something that cuts through every demographic and every level of familiarity with coin collecting and lands with immediate visceral impact, because everyone understands what a penny is, everyone has held one, and the idea that one of those tiny copper coins could be worth $8 million is the kind of thing that stops people in their tracks and makes them want to know more. And here is the thing that I really want you to sit with, the thing that makes this coin and every rare coin we talk about on this channel so deeply and personally relevant to every single person watching this video right now. And that is the undeniable, documented, historically verified fact that rare wheat pennies are still being found, still being pulled out of old collections and estate sales and coin rolls and forgotten jars of change all across this country, every single year by people who were not professional numismatists, who were not lifetime collectors, who were just curious enough to look closely at an old coin and smart enough to take it to a professional for evaluation. And those people have changed their financial lives forever because they took that one extra step, and the 1948 Wheat Penny is absolutely among the coins that could still be out there waiting to be found, because not every specimen has been cataloged, not every error has been identified, and the great treasure hunt of American numismatics is very much still ongoing, and the next lucky finder could be absolutely anyone. It could be you, sitting right now in your living room watching this video, with a jar of old coins sitting on a shelf somewhere in your house that you have never really looked at carefully, and that possibility, that very real, very tangible possibility, is what makes this hobby one of the most exciting and most potentially rewarding pursuits that any person can undertake. The 1948 Wheat Penny also carries with it a weight of historical emotion that adds to its appeal in ways that go beyond pure numismatic value, because 1948 was a year of profound transition in America. A year of hope and uncertainty and ambition and fear. A year when the country was trying to figure out exactly who it was going to be in this strange new post-war world, and the coins minted that year are physical artifacts of that moment. Little copper time capsules that have survived decades of handling and storage and change to arrive in the present day as tangible connections to a world that is quickly fading from living memory. And collectors who acquire pieces like this are not just buying a coin, they are buying a piece of American history, a fragment of a story that is bigger than any individual and more enduring than any market fluctuation. And that is a value that cannot be fully captured by any auction price, no matter how high it climbs. So as we bring today's video to a close, I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to go and find every old coin you have in your possession, every jar, every drawer, every old wallet, every forgotten piggy bank, and I want you to look at them carefully, especially any wheat pennies you find, especially anything from the 1940s, because the stories we have told today about the 1945 wheat penny worth $13 million and the 1948 wheat penny worth $8 million are not fairy tales, they are not exaggerations, they are documented realities of the rare coin market, and the next chapter of that story could be written by you, today in your own home. And if you found this video valuable, if you learned something today that you did not know before, then please do us the enormous favor of hitting that like button right now, subscribing to Error Coins Hub so you never miss another incredible story like this one, and sharing this video with someone in your life who you think might be sitting on a fortune without even knowing it, because that is what this channel is all about, bringing the incredible hidden world of rare coins to people who deserve to know that history and fortune can sometimes be found in the most ordinary of places. And we will see you in the very next video.